There are places on the internet you're never supposed to visit. Dark corners that whisper to those who feel forgotten. I didn't know what I was getting into when I first stumbled onto that thread. Deep Web Confessions, 1999. I was just looking for an escape, something to feel alive again. But what I found there, it didn't just haunt my dreams, it followed me back into the real world. My name is Elmo. I'm 22, and I've never really had a normal life. I grew up in a slum near the train tracks, where the sound of metal scraping metal was more familiar than laughter. My father disappeared when I was 5. My mother, she did her best, but grief eats away at people in silence, like termites in old wood. By the time I turned 16, she was gone too. Not dead, just gone. No letter. No oublié. Just vanished. I didn't have much left after that. I dropped out of school, slept in abandoned buildings, collected scraps. Most days I felt like a ghost watching the world pass me by. But I had one friend, Turo. He was the kind of guy who made you forget, even for a moment, that life was hard. He was loud, always hungry, always cracking jokes. We used to dig through old junk computers and broken phones, dreaming of building something great. He said the internet was full of gold if you knew where to look. One night, we managed to fix up this ancient desktop we found in a garbage pile. It booted up with a slow, sick hum, the screen flickering like it wasn't sure it wanted to stay alive. But it worked. We had Wi-Fi from a nearby cafe, barely enough to load images. Still, it was something. That's when Turo introduced me to Reddit. At first, it was fun. We laughed at memes, read creepy stories, and shared ghost tales from the barrio. Then one post changed everything. It was buried deep in a thread that didn't show up on search, like it didn't want to be found. The username was just a string of symbols, and the title read, "Only those marked by silence may see beyond the code." Turo laughed it off, saying it was probably just a hacker playing games. But something about it pulled me in. We clicked it. The screen blinked 3 times and then went black. I thought the old computer had finally died, but then strange green text began to appear. "You've seen the surface. Now dig." A link popped up. No preview, no details. Just a URL ending in onion. Now, I'd heard about the deep web before, but only from rumors. The kind of place where illegal trades happen, where the lines between reality and madness blur. I should have stopped. But pain makes you reckless. And loneliness? It makes you curious. Turo said it was probably just a prank. But even he looked uneasy. We use a browser called Tor, installed with shaky hands and poor English instructions. When the page loaded, it was nothing but plain white text on a black screen. "Welcome, seeker. Do you accept the 30 truths?" There was no button, no link, just those words. We sat there, staring at the screen. And then, I don't know how to explain it, a cold wind passed through the room. We were indoors, all the windows shut. But it felt like something brushed the back of my neck, like invisible fingers checking if I was still breathing. Suddenly, the screen changed on its own. Truth 1. The watchers are not in the sky. They're beneath your home, listening when you sleep. Below that, a video file appeared. We clicked it. It was grainy footage, someone walking through a tunnel under what looked like a regular neighborhood. The person's breathing was loud, and they whispered something in a language I didn't recognize. Then the camera turned, and we saw it, a pale, eyeless face peeking from a hole in the wall, grinning. Turo slammed the laptop shut. That's enough. We didn't talk much that night. The air in the room felt heavy, like something had been invited in. But the next morning, things got weirder. When I woke up, I found deep scratch marks on my window frame, like fingernails. I lived on the 2nd floor. Turo called me in a panic. "Elmo," he said, "I think we triggered something." He wasn't joking anymore. He had a dream. He said it wasn't just a dream. It felt like he was awake, lying in bed, unable to move, watching a tall shadow crawl out of his closet. It didn't walk, it floated, and it kept whispering, "One down, 29 to go. That same day, our old computer burned out. Smoke. Sparks. Completely fried. We hadn't even turned it on. For a while, we tried to forget. But the deep web, it doesn't let you go so easily. I began to notice things. Faces and reflections that weren't mine. Whispers from my pillow at night, and emails from random addresses with only one word. Continue. And the dreams, they got worse. One night, I found myself standing in the middle of a desert of broken screens, all showing the same footage of me sleeping. In every screen, a black figure stood at the foot of my bed. Still, there were moments when I could laugh with Turo. We'd sit by the riverbank, eating Isaw and trying to act like nothing was wrong. He'd tease me about my paranoia, even as his eyes darted at every shadow. Maybe we're just cursed, he said once, half joking. But even then, we knew it wasn't a curse. It was an invitation, one that we had already accepted. And now, there was no way back. A few days ago, I received a small black envelope slipped under my door. No one saw who left it. Inside was a USB stick, unlabeled plain. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into a school library computer. There were 29 video files, each one titled simply, Truth 2, Truth 3, Truth 30. I only clicked the second one. It was a dashcam video, a driver humming softly, alone in the dark, when a figure appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the road. The car didn't stop. It passed through the figure. But the video didn't end there. The driver pulled over, breathing hard, whispering I didn't hit anyone. Then from the back seat, a voice replied, "You hit me just fine." I slammed the USB out and ran. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see that face. Pale, smiling, waiting. There are still 28 videos I haven't seen. But they want me to. They say if you finish all 30, something follows you back. And last night, someone knocked on my door. 3 times. But when I looked through the peephole, no one was there. I didn't sleep that night. After hearing the knock and seeing no one outside, I felt something shift in the air, like the ground under my feet had been pulled just a little off balance. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was knowing something was coming, something ancient. I could feel it watching, breathing, hungry. The next morning, I went to see the only person who might still know something about my past, Taya Belen, my mother's older cousin. She lived in a broken house near the edge of the mangrove swamps, where the trees seemed to whisper with every gust of wind. When I arrived, she didn't even let me speak. She just stared at me, really stared, like she could see the weight I was carrying. "Your mother tried to protect you," she whispered, "but the blood always calls." I asked her what she meant, but she only handed me an old tin box wrapped in faded banana leaves. "You're old enough now. Open it when the shadows get loud." I left, more confused than ever. That night, I opened the box. Inside was an object I had never seen before, a small, greenish stone wrapped in worn red thread. It pulsed lightly, like a heartbeat. The moment I touched it, the lights in my room flickered and the air turned cold. Suddenly, my nose bled. That's when I remembered something my mother used to say when I was a kid, back when she was still herself. Never touch the heart if you're not ready to bleed. At the time, I thought she was talking about love. But now I wasn't so sure. The days that followed were strange. The world felt thinner. I walked through crowds and feel eyes watching me that weren't there. Turo started acting different too. He laughed less, slept more. Sometimes he would speak in his sleep, muttering things like they're inside the wires and the code smells like ash. Then one night, he disappeared. No note, no warning, just gone like my mother. I searched everywhere, went to his usual spots, asked friends. Nothing. I was about to give up when I heard a strange sound near the riverbank, bubbling like something was breathing just below the water. I followed it. The moon was high, casting silver on the rippling water. That's when I saw something rise. Not a person, not an animal. It had scales like a fish, but a human face, eyes deep as oceans. A shokoi. I should have run, but I didn't. It spoke without opening its mouth. The words echoed in my head like whispers inside a hollow shell. You carry the stone. The blood remembers. I couldn't move. The shokoi floated closer, holding out a hand webbed and shining with pearls. The curse started long before you. Before the code. Before your mother ran. I managed to speak. My voice shook. What curse? It pointed to the green stone wrapped in red thread, now glowing in my pocket. Your family once guarded the boundary between the spirit world and the web of thoughts, what you call the deep web. But they grew proud. Someone opened the gates and let the Watchers through. Watchers. I remembered the face in the video, the one in the tunnel. Pale, grinning. You must seal it again, the shokoi said, or the truth will consume not just you, but all. Then, like fog, it dissolved into the water. I was left shaking, heart racing, the night suddenly quiet. Back home, I dug through my old things, desperate to find some kind of clue. That's when I uncovered one of my mother's journals. The pages were torn, water-stained, but one entry stood out. If Elmo ever finds the Mutya, he must never use it in anger. It remembers. And the Watchers, they feed on emotion. That night, I dreamed of her, standing in a field of broken mirrors. She looked younger. Her eyes were clear. I tried to stop them, she said, but I was weak. You won't be. When I woke up, the green stone was warm, and I saw symbols glowing on my bedroom wall. Symbols like those on the deep web thread. They were counting down. I knew I needed help. So I went to a small village at the edge of San Felipe. People whispered about a strange old man living there. An albulario who didn't age, who talked to spirits in riddles. I found him in a hut covered in dried herbs and strange charms. He looked up as if expecting me. Your mother came to me once, he said, without greeting. Told me the Watchers would return. Told me to prepare her son. He led me to a room filled with sand and salt circles. There, he placed the Mutya in the center. He began chanting, softly at first, then louder. Smoke filled the room. My head began to ache. My chest felt tight. The ground shook, and I saw visions. My ancestors holding the Mutya, fighting off shadow-like swangs with glowing eyes. One of them looked like me. You have the blood of guardians, he said. But you must train. They will come for the stone, and they'll come for your soul. He gave me a small dagger, old, rusty, but the blade shimmered when near the Mutya. This is not for fighting, he warned, but for remembering. The moment you forget who you are, you lose. The next weeks were filled with strange lessons. I learned to trace old sigils using smoke, to see through reflections, to listen to spirits trapped in signals, ghosts speaking through static in old radios. I learned that the deep web was more than just data. It was a gate, a network of souls and secrets too heavy for the living. But every time I trained, the Watchers got closer. I'd see their faces in puddles, hear them breathing through my cracked phone speakers. One even appeared in a broken TV screen, its mouth moving with no sound. Just eyes, watching. I asked the albulario how to stop them. You can't stop a flood, he said, but you can build a wall. One night, I returned home to find my door open. Inside, someone or something had been there. Scratches on the walls, symbols in ash, and on my desk, a note written in perfect handwriting. Turo is alive. But not for long. Finish the truths. Beside it, the USB. The same one. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I knew the next video would bring me closer to something terrible. But if Turo was still alive, if there was even a chance, I had to keep going. So I lit a candle, wrapped the Mutya around my neck, and plugged the USB in. The screen turned black. And this time, a voice spoke. Not from the speakers, but from inside the room. Truth 3. We never left. We only learned to hide. Then, slowly, the screen began to glow, and a face, my mother's, appeared. But something was wrong with her eyes. They were completely black. I stared at the screen, frozen. My mother's face was there, young, beautiful, but twisted with something dark. Her mouth moved slowly, as if underwater. The voice that came wasn't hers. It was deeper, echoing, like it came from the bottom of a well. "You were never meant to survive," it said. "You were meant to open the way." My breath caught. I wanted to scream, to pull the USB out and smash the screen, but I didn't. I just sat there, heart pounding like a drum inside a cave. The screen flickered again, and her face vanished. In its place, I saw a new video file named bloodroot.mp4. I didn't open it. I couldn't. My hand was shaking too much. That night, I didn't sleep again. I kept hearing my name whispered in corners, in electric buzzing, in the wind brushing through the cracks of my window. It wasn't just paranoia. Something had shifted. The watchers, they knew I was listening now. The next morning, I returned to the albulario. He was outside, burning herbs, his eyes heavy with something I didn't understand. Maybe fear, maybe regret. "They've seen your face," he said without looking at me. "You've started a war you can't walk away from." "I saw my mother," I said, barely holding back my tears. "Or something using her face." He nodded slowly. "The watchers take what hurts the most. They'll use your memories, your love, your guilt, turn them into weapons." I looked down at the mutia still tied around my neck. It wasn't glowing anymore. It just hung there, cold and silent. I felt like it blamed me for something I didn't even understand. They said I was never meant to survive. I whispered that I was meant to open the way. The albulario finally looked at me. His eyes were sad. "Your mother didn't die," he said. "She gave herself up to slow them down, to lock the gate, even for a little while. But it was never going to last." I felt something collapse inside me. All my life, I thought she abandoned me, that she just disappeared like she didn't care. But now I understood. She left because she cared too much. And that truth hurt more than a lie. I walk home alone, the streets quiet and gray. Rain started to fall, soft at first, then harder, like the sky couldn't hold back anymore. I didn't run. I let it soak me. I needed to feel something real, something that wasn't cursed or haunted or watching. Back at home, I found an envelope under my door. No name, no handwriting, just a blank envelope, wet from the rain. Inside was a photograph. It was old, taken years ago, me as a baby, held by my mother. Standing beside her was someone I never expected to see. My uncle, Tio Nestor. He died in a fire when I was 7, or so I was told. But in this picture, he looked exactly the same as I remembered, except something was wrong. His eyes were scratched out, not like by accident. Someone had deliberately removed them. On the back of the photo were the words, "He knew. He lied. Ask him." I dropped the photo. The floor felt like it tilted under me. I suddenly remembered something my mother once said in a half-asleep days back when I was just a boy. "If Nestor ever returns, don't believe his face." But how could he return if he died? Unless he never did. Unless the fire was a lie. Unless he was part of this the whole time. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely ate, barely spoke. The house felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in. Every mirror in my home started to show things that weren't real. Eyes staring back, mouths moving without sound, dark shapes hovering just behind me. One night, I heard scratching behind the walls. I followed the sound until I reached the basement door. It hadn't been opened in years. I remember my mother once told me, "Never go down there. It remembers." But now I had no choice. With a flashlight and a mutia around my neck, I stepped into the basement. Dust choked the air. Spiderwebs clung to my face. The light flickered as I moved deeper toward the far wall where my mother used to keep locked chests. One chest was already open. Inside was an old typewriter, a reel-to-reel recorder, and a notebook wrapped in dried banana leaves, the pages brittle with time. On the first page was a name, Nestor Alvarez, keeper of Gate 2. I flipped through the pages. Symbols, maps, names of people I didn't know, dates, a ritual involving Sigbin blood and a shell of the dead. It was all too much. But one page stood out. When the boy turns 17, the blood will awaken. If he resists, destroy the Mutia. If he accepts, guide him to the river mouth. I was 17 3 months ago. The Mutia had awakened. And now, someone wanted me destroyed. I ran back upstairs, heart in my throat, only to find the front door open. On the floor was a trail of muddy footprints leading into my room. I followed it, and there, sitting on my bed, was a man, middle-aged, wearing a worn denim jacket, hands folded. "Hello, Elmo," he said. My breath caught. I knew that voice. Tio Nestor. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've grown," he said softly. "You look just like your mother." I stepped back. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was," he answered. "But the Watchers, they make trades. They give second chances, in exchange for loyalty." I reached for the dagger the Albulario gave me, but he raised a hand. "I'm not here to hurt you. Not yet. I just came to see how far you've come." His eyes flickered black for a second. Just a second. "You think you're chosen? You think the Mutia makes you special?" he sneered. "You're just another pawn. Just like your mother. Just like me." I raised the dagger. "Get out." He stood slowly laughing. "They'll come for you soon," he whispered. "And when they do, no amount of love or training will save you." Then he vanished. I blinked, and he was gone. No door creaked. No wind. Just gone like a bad dream slipping out of reach. That night, I finally opened the video, bloodroot.mp4. What I saw changed everything. It was footage of my mother recorded years ago. She was crying, holding the same Mutia, whispering. I tried to stop them. I sealed Gate 1. But Nestor opened Gate 2. If you're seeing this, it means they're close. The Watchers don't want power. They want to rewrite truth. You're not just my son. You're the last sentinel. My heart broke. All this time, I thought I was alone. But I wasn't. I was chosen. I was targeted. And now, I had to choose. Run from it. Or stand and fight. Outside, I heard the wind howl. But it wasn't the wind. It was voices. Calling my name. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed near the window, watching the shadows stretch and twist under the moonlight. Every sound felt louder. Every movement outside looked suspicious. I knew they were out there. The Watchers, the cursed ones, the things that whispered through static and fed on fear. My mother's last words kept echoing in my mind. You're the last sentinel. But what did that really mean? I didn't feel like a sentinel. I felt like a scared kid with a mutia and a broken past. Morning came, but the light didn't bring peace. The sky was gray and heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. That day I went back to the Albulario, but his hut was gone, burned down, only ashes and bones left. No one in the barangay would speak of it. They looked away when I asked. Some even shut their doors before I reached them. It was like the whole town had agreed to pretend he never existed. That's when I realized the Watchers were cleaning up, erasing the helpers, preparing for something. I wasn't ready, but I had no choice. I returned home and called the only person I trusted, Criselda. She had been my friend since we were little. She didn't believe in curses or spirits, but when I told her everything, really told her, she didn't laugh. She didn't walk away. She simply said, "Okay." Then we fight. We hid in the back room of my house, surrounded by old heirlooms, bundles of herbs, and every notebook my mother ever left behind. We started studying the pages. Some were in Latin and others in Old Tagalog. But slowly, piece by piece, we began to understand. The Watchers weren't just spirits. They were fallen guardians, once protectors of the realm between dreams and waking. But something twisted them, made them hunger for truth, for memory, for the power inside bloodlines like mine. The gates my mother spoke of weren't physical doors, they were anchored to people, to blood, to pain, and I was one of them. The second gate, opened by Tio Nestor, was already leaking. I could feel it. Nightmares creeping into the day. Shadows flickering where none should be. Whispers in the rain. Criselda noticed too. Her phone screen would glitch every time she tried to call someone. Lights would flicker even without electricity. And then came the dreams. Every night, I'd dream of a forest with no end. Trees like bones. Faces hanging from branches. A river made of black water. And at its center, a stone gate with carvings too ancient to understand. In those dreams, I always stood alone, until one night, Criselda was there too. When we woke up, we both said the same thing. It's calling us. The mutia around my neck had begun to pulse softly, like a heartbeat. Criselda found a carved shell in my mother's chest, with markings that matched the ones in the forest dream. When we placed the shell near the mutia, a faint light connected them. We were getting closer, but so were they. That evening, the town church bell rang for the first time in years. Not once, not twice, but 13 times. It echoed across the fields like a scream. The sky turned red-orange, even though the sun hadn't set. Birds flew in panicked circles before disappearing altogether. Criselda grabbed my arm. It's starting. We packed what we could, herbs, pages, the mutia, the shell, and headed toward the mountain river, just like my mother's notebook said. But the road wasn't empty. Twice we saw people we knew, neighbors, old classmates, standing perfectly still on the side of the road, eyes closed, faces blank, like puppets without strings. As we passed them, their heads turned slowly to follow us, even though they never opened their eyes. It was like the watchers were inside them now, watching us through their skin. At the river, the air felt thicker, heavier. We followed the current upstream until we found a clearing. At the center was a rock circle. Inside it, bones arranged in a spiral. Criselda stepped back, but I felt drawn. I knelt and placed the mutia at the center. The moment it touched the ground, the spiral glowed faint blue. Then I heard her voice, my mother, soft, sad like wind in the trees. Don't fight for me, Anik. Fight for what they'll take next. Criselda heard it too. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. We knew we were being guided, but we also knew we weren't safe. That night, we stayed in an abandoned rest house near the river. The windows were cracked, and vines had grown through the walls. Criselda couldn't sleep. She sat by the window all night, holding the shell close. I stared at the ceiling, remembering Tio Nestor's words. No amount of love or training will save you. What did he mean? Was he warning me? Or was it a threat? The next morning, we found a message scratched into the bark of a tree outside the rest house. One more gate. Then the world burns. No one was there. No footprints. No sound. Just those words. We knew we were running out of time. We needed more knowledge. We needed help. That's when we remembered the bobbing, puting Mata, a blind spirit who used to appear in old stories, said to guard the truth under waterfalls. The nearest waterfall was hours away, deep in the mountains. We traveled on foot, crossing slippery rocks and thick jungle. The deeper we went, the more the world changed. Colors seemed dimmer, air colder. Even time felt slow, like we were stepping into another realm. When we finally reached the falls, Criselda collapsed to her knees. There she was, an old woman, skin gray like stone, hair white as bone, sitting under the rushing water, smiling with eyes wide open, but completely white. She spoke without moving her mouth. So, the last seed comes at last. I approached slowly, heart pounding. We need answers, I said, about the third gate. She tilted her head. The third gate lies in your grief. It is not a place. It is a memory, one that has not yet come true. What does that mean? Griselda asked. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she held out a small wooden box. Inside was a key, made of bone. You will know where it fits when the door bleeds, she said. Suddenly, her body crumbled into ash, swept away by the water. I looked at Griselda. Her hand was shaking. This is too much, she whispered. We're just kids, Elmo. We're not warriors. I know, I said quietly, but we're all that's left. We walked back down the mountain in silence. That night, the nightmares returned, but this time, Griselda didn't wake up. She screamed in her sleep, eyes open, pupils gone white. She spoke in voices not her own. He walks in the skin of family. He brings the gate behind his smile. I held her, trying to wake her up, but the air was thick with static. The lights exploded. The mukia burned against my chest. And then, in the corner of the room, stood Tio Nestor. His eyes were black, his body flickering like broken video. He smiled. Ready or not, boy, the final door is opening. My knees gave out. I stared at Tio Nestor, his smile unnatural and cold, like it didn't belong on a human face. His skin flickered, glitching between what I remembered and something else, something rotten. Griselda was still screaming, her voice deeper now, echoing like there were two of her inside one body. The room was pulsing. Light and shadow danced wildly. The mucus on my chest felt like it would melt through my skin. Tio Nestor stepped closer. You thought I was protecting you? His voice wasn't his. It was layered, like many mouths speaking at once. One of them I recognized. My mother. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. My body felt like stone, frozen in place by fear or something darker. I needed you to survive, Elmo, he said. I needed you to open the final door. Then, in one blink, he was gone, and Griselda fell silent. Her body dropped limp. I rushed to her, held her face, shouting her name. But she was cold. For a moment, I thought she was gone, until her lips moved. He lied. Her eyes slowly opened. The white was fading, but tears were falling. He was never your real uncle. I froze. What? Griselda sat up slowly, holding her head like it was splitting open. Then she looked at me, her eyes full of pain. Elmo, your real uncle died years ago. That thing, it's been pretending, watching, guiding you here. I wanted to deny it. I had to, but deep down I knew. All those strange things he said, the warnings, the way he disappeared after Mama's death, it all made sense now. He had used me. He had been using me since the beginning. I stood, dizzy, my mind racing. Griselda reached into her bag and pulled out the bone key. It was now glowing faint red, not white like before, as if the betrayal had awakened something darker inside it. The final gate, she whispered. It's closer than we thought. Outside, the wind howled. The sky had turned pitch black, even though it wasn't even evening yet. The third gate, it wasn't just a memory. It was me. Suddenly, I remembered a detail in my mother's notebook. If the final key glows red, the gate lies within the heart of the cursed. What if I wasn't just the last sentinel? What if I was also the gate, the one they needed to open it all? That night, we left the rest house and headed back to town. We couldn't risk staying in one place anymore. Griselda barely spoke. She kept holding the key close, like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I couldn't blame her. I kept thinking about Tio Nestor, whatever he really was. Had he always been the enemy? Or did something turn him? Was it more like him? As we walked, we saw signs of the Watchers everywhere. A baby crying with no sound. A woman hanging laundry with her eyes rolled back. A tricycle driver sleeping with his mouth full of dirt. The town was falling. Or maybe already fallen. We made it to the old school where my mother used to teach. It was abandoned after the fires years ago. But Griselda insisted we go there. Something in her visions kept pointing back to it. Inside, it smelled like ash and old paper. We walked down the halls, flashlights flickering. On one door, someone had carved the words, "The child is the lock. The blood is the price." I swallowed hard. That's when we heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, not human. We hid behind a stack of broken chairs. Griselda held her breath. I gripped the mutia tightly. The sound got louder, closer, then stopped, right above us. Suddenly, dust fell from the ceiling, and a voice, deep and guttural, whispered, "I smell the key." Griselda grabbed my hand and ran. We sprinted through the halls, dodging fallen beams and smashed desks. The thing upstairs roared like a wild animal, but layered with voices like 1,000 insects screaming at once. We barely made it out, but something strange happened as we reached the field. The mutia glowed again, this time brighter than ever. And in the distance, we saw a figure, a woman, floating just above the grass. Her hair was long and silver, her skin glowing like moonlight. She raised one hand toward me. The blood remembers. And then she was gone. Griselda was speechless. We both felt it. Another piece of the puzzle had just snapped into place. Later that night, we camped near the edge of the woods, far from any homes. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing whispers in the trees. Griselda finally broke the silence. "Do you think we're going to survive this?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Maybe it's not about surviving." She looked at me. "Then what is it about?" I turned to her. "Maybe it's about ending it, even if we don't make it." She nodded slowly, but I could see the fear in her eyes. As dawn approached, I went alone into the woods. Something had changed in me. I felt connected to the land, to the trees, to every lost soul crying in the silence. I reached a clearing and sat down. And that's when the spirit returned, the one from the field. She sat across from me now, her eyes glowing. "You are the final gate, Elmo. The curse lives in your bloodline. It was sealed long ago by your Lola, but now the Watchers know. They've waited years for you." I stared at her. "Why me?" Her voice softened. "Because you carry all three marks: the heart of memory, the mind of the gatekeeper, and the blood of betrayal." "Betrayal?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Your father was one of them." My whole body went cold. "What?" She continued. "He loved your mother, yes, but he was born of the Watchers. He came here to open the gate, but your mother turned him, made him choose love over power. And for that, she was marked." I stood up. "So, my existence was the key all along?" "Not just the key," she whispered. "The lock and the price." I shook my head. My heart was racing. My hands trembled. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." She vanished again, leaving only a single object where she sat. A black stone dagger, its blade carved with my name. I returned to Griselda and told her everything. She cried, not just for me, but for what we both now knew had to happen. To stop the Watchers, to close the final gate. I would have to die, but not just that. I'd have to offer my soul willingly through the dagger, sealing the gate from the other side. A living sacrifice. Griselda refused at first. She yelled, cursed, punched the dirt. But eventually, she held my hand and said, "If this is your fate, then I'll go with you." All the way, we looked out toward the horizon. The sky was darker now, swirling with storms that hadn't even formed. We knew what was coming. They were gathering. The Watchers, the Fallen, and the thing pretending to be Tio Nestor. The final battle wasn't days away. It was tomorrow, and only one of us might walk away from it. The night was heavier than ever, like the air itself didn't want to move. Griselda and I stood on the edge of the forest, staring at the ancient field that now pulsed with a strange red glow. The Watchers were already waiting. In the center of the field, a massive circle of ash and bone had been drawn. Symbols danced around it, moving as if alive, whispering things we couldn't understand. The mutia burned hot against my chest. The bone key in Criselda's hand was glowing again, this time with a violent orange light. And, standing at the heart of it all, Tio Nestor, or whatever he really was now. He wasn't hiding anymore. His form had fully changed, towering, with skin like cracked stone and eyes that bled smoke. Around him, shadow creatures twitched and clicked, crawling over the earth like spiders with human faces. Criselda reached for my hand. "This is it." I nodded. "Let's finish this." We stepped into the field. As we crossed the ash line, time slowed. The wind stopped. The trees froze. Tio Nestor raised his hand. "You made it," he said, his voice echoing like thunder underground. "You were always meant to," he added. "Elmo. My blood. My creation. That stopped me." "You're not my blood," I said, shaking. But he only smiled. "Oh, but I am. Did your spirit friend not tell you the full truth?" He raised his other hand, and from the ash, a figure rose. My mother, or something wearing her face. But her eyes were still hers. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her hands were bound in vines of black flame. "Elmo," she whispered, "you have to choose." Tio Nestor pointed at her. "Give yourself willingly, and she lives. Fight me, and she dies." Again, Criselda stepped forward. "You're a coward, using memories to win." But I couldn't breathe. My legs wouldn't move. My mother was alive? No, this was a trick, wasn't it? "She's not real," I whispered. But a part of me hoped she was. Tio Nestor laughed. "Oh, she's real enough. Pain makes things real. That's what built this place." He waved his hand again, and the shadow creatures surged forward. Criselda screamed, throwing the bone key to the ground. It shattered, sending a shock wave across the field. The creatures froze. I stepped forward, the mutia glowing like a sun now. Tio Nestor growled, "You don't even know how to use that thing." But I did. In that moment, everything connected. The mutia was a seed. The dagger was the root. And I was the soil. I pulled the dagger from my bag, the black blade with my name. It pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. "This ends now," I said. He lunged at me, faster than lightning. But Criselda threw a vial of ash into the air. It exploded in light, blinding him. I ran toward my mother, cutting the black vines with the blade. She fell into my arms. But she wasn't breathing. "No, no, please," Tio Nestor roared, stumbling forward, smoke pouring from his body. The ground cracked. From the center of the field, a massive gate of bone rose, its surface carved with every nightmare I'd ever had. The Watchers were opening it, and I was the final key. "Elmo," Criselda shouted. "Now, the sacrifice." I turned to her. "But, my mom, she chose you," she said. "Now choose her." Tears streaming, I stepped to the gate. I held the dagger tight, and for a moment I saw everything. My childhood, my mother's smile, the laughter of my real Tio Nestor, Criselda's fierce loyalty, and the curse crawling through my veins like a dark river. I raised the blade, but then a hand grabbed mine, not to stop me, but to join me. My mother, she was awake. "Let me go," she said softly. "Let me do this." "No, Mama, I can't. You're the seed, Elmo. But I'm the root. I buried the curse in myself long ago. Let me pull it out." Tio Nestor screamed in rage. "She'll destroy everything." The Watchers began pouring forward, dozens now, maybe hundreds, their eyes glowing, the sky bleeding red. But Criselda raised both hands, calling on the last of the spirit energy. A dome of light surrounded us, pushing them back. "Now," she cried. My mother took the dagger and placed it against her chest. I grabbed her hands. "I love you." "I know," she smiled. "That's why we win." She drove the blade in. The world shattered. Light exploded from the gate. Not white, not red, something older. Blue, deep, alive. The Watchers screamed as they were sucked inward, one by one, pulled into the collapsing bone gate. Tio Nestor clawed at the air, his form unraveling, revealing dozens of faces beneath the mask, all the ones he had stolen. "This isn't over," he screamed. "It is for me," I whispered. Griselda grabbed me as the earth beneath us split. The mutia on my chest shattered into dust. My mother's body glowed like a star, then vanished. I woke up 3 days later, in a hospital bed. Griselda was by my side, bruised but smiling. Outside, the sun was shining. People were moving again. The whispers were gone. The watchers were gone. But so was my mother. I cried for hours. Then I walked outside and stood under the sky. I could still feel her. In the wind. In the light. In me. A month passed. I returned to the field. Now, just grass and flowers. No bones. No ash. But one thing remained, half buried in the soil. The broken tip of the dagger. I picked it up and held it to my heart. Then I heard it. A whisper. One final message from my mother. The gate is closed, but the roots run deep. Watch the shadows, Anik. I turned to leave, and from the trees, a new shadow moved, smiling, watching. I didn't speak for days after that final moment at the gate. Something inside me had changed. Something heavy but quiet, like the earth after a storm, wet, broken but clean. Griselda stayed close. We both knew life wouldn't just go back to normal. Too many things had shifted. The world we thought we knew had cracks now, visible only to those who had looked into the dark and lived to tell the story. The town seemed different too. The trees stood taller, greener. The air lighter. People smiled more. Maybe because the heavy presence that once hovered over everything was gone. But for me, the silence my mother left behind echoed louder than any scream. I walked to the market one morning and passed the place where she used to buy dried fish and rice. For a second, I smelled her perfume, sampaguita, and soap, and it nearly broke me. But I held on, because she held on for me. I had to honor that. A few days later, Griselda and I visited her grave. Yes, we buried something. A box of her letters, her old shawl, and the broken blade that helped end it all. We wrapped it in white cloth and placed it beneath a young guava tree by the river. It wasn't a grave for a body, but for a spirit, a sacrifice, and a promise. "Imis here," you whispered. Griselda nodded. She knew you'd carry the light. We stood there in silence as the leaves above us danced with the wind. She was gone, but not lost. Weeks passed. Griselda returned to her village to help rebuild the school where she once learned healing. She said something was calling her back, and I believed her. She promised to visit, and I promised to write. And I did. I wrote her every week, telling her how I was slowly adjusting to life again. How the town, once haunted, was healing. How people began talking again, about farming, about school, about the rain. And how I still kept the broken mutia in a jar beside my bed, just in case. Then, something strange happened. One night, I had a dream. I was back at the field, but this time it wasn't dark. It was golden. There were no watchers, no whispers, no shadows. Only my mother, sitting under the guava tree. She looked young again, her eyes full of peace. "Elmo," she said, "the gate is sealed, but others will come. You must be ready." I woke up with a jolt, sweating, heart racing, but not afraid, just alert. 2 months later, an old man arrived in town. He carried nothing but a wooden box and a staff carved with ancient patterns. People avoided him, but I recognized the air around him, thick, old, powerful. He asked for me by name. "Elmo," he said, his voice deep but kind. "Your mother once saved my life. I'm here to return the favor." He opened the box. Inside was a stone, not glowing, not magical looking, just a plain stone with a symbol carved into it. But when I touched it, I saw flames, ocean, skies falling in peace. "This is the second seed," he said. "What seed?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "There are more gates, more bones buried, More curses rooted in the land. He stood up and looked to the mountains. And you're not done. That night, I sat by the river and thought about what he said. I remembered how afraid I used to be, how I just wanted to be left alone, how I hated my bloodline, hated the shadows that clung to me. But now I saw them differently, not as a curse, but as a responsibility. Something I didn't choose, maybe, but something I could carry, like my mother carried me, like Griselda stood by me, like the spirit of Tio Nestor once protected me before he was taken. The next morning, I packed a small bag, the stone, the broken mutia, a notebook, and the letters my mother wrote me when I was little. I visited the guava tree one last time. I touched the bark and whispered, "Thank you." Then I walked toward the mountains, toward the next seed, toward the next shadow. Because if there's one thing I learned through it all, it's this: the darkness never truly disappears, but neither does the light. And someone has to walk between both, to hold the line, to carry the stories, to remember the names, to guard the gate. And so I walked still, not as a boy cursed by blood, but as a keeper of fire, a guardian of roots, a child of a mother who gave everything, and a friend of those who believe in the impossible. If you're hearing this story now, maybe it's your turn to remember, to listen, to feel, and to choose. Because the gates may be closed, but the watchers, they never stop watching. End.